I like dungeon meshi, I like marcille, and I don't like backgrounds. Therefore, I combined them all and made this. Here's my process. So, like all good artists, I start off by scrolling for 10 hours on Pinterest, then I compile all the images that I find onto Milanote, hashtag not sponsored. I separated it into character references and overall composition references. Thumbnailing is something I only just recently started to do after I saw a lot of other artists doing it. Before that, I just kind of went ham at it. So, as you can see here, I am sketching out the basic composition and where I want all the elements to be, and I'm also adding in some rough coloring so I have an idea of what my color scheme is. While doing this, I use a lot of different blending modes in order to get the exact color that I want, and during this process I also explore a bunch of different options because that's what thumbnailing is for after all, and that's how I finally landed on this one. Okay, so this step is pretty self-explanatory. I began by importing the image of my thumbnail and drawing over it. So I'm making things more clear, like by drawing out the actual body anatomy stuff and fixing up the elements, maybe adding more elements that I didn't think of before. And I also don't have a line art step because that just takes too much time. I just clean up my sketch and that's good enough for me. While I'm doing this, I'm referring to my giant Milanote board while also watching Breaking Bad, which is why I had to edit out so many awkward pauses during this footage. Alright, now it's time to start applying the base color. So while I'm doing this, I have my thumbnail reference open, and I am directly color picking from the reference. And I change up the colors when I see fit. One video idea that I have is talking about color theory, but I realized that I have to actually know color theory in order to talk about it. So that's why I'm planning on challenging myself to actually learn color theory, because I've been putting it off for too long. One thing that I've learned is that the lasso tool is your best friend. Simply just lasso the area that you want and use an airbrush to lightly brush over that area, and you'll get a nice gradient, but also with hard edges. One time-saving trick is to, instead of outlining, like sketching the scene elements, simply block them out with colors. I found that this looks more natural and is also very time-saving. Okay, so people usually do texture last, but my workflow isn't too great, and so we're doing it now. So right now I'm blocking out the shapes of the flowers using the shell brush, the default shell brush. I love this brush so much. It is so good and so yummy and so texturous, and I used it as my only texture brush throughout this piece. Alright, now we can move on to the main subject of this piece, Marcille. So I filled in her silhouette with the gray base color and clipped all of the individual colors to the gray base color. So this is useful for the shading stage, which you'll see next. Alright, so the reason I clip everything to a gray base color is so I can clip a multiplied blending layer onto everything and carve out where the light hits. A bluish gray is the main shadow color, but I also airbrush in some pink near the edges where the light hits, and also some blue in random areas where I think it looks good. After that, I merge all my layers, yes I know, very scary, and I start adding in some more detailed shadows. I also make the pink edge around the light more clear by using an overlay layer. So here things get hectic. I start going all over the place, fixing areas that I think need to be fixed and adding more things everywhere. So here you can see that I decided to change the hand position last minute, struggled and gave up and moved on to rendering the background. So I fix up some of the colors by using many blending layers, usually overlay, add, and multiply, and I airbrush in some colors. So I also added more clouds in the sky and more flowers on the ground. And I also added some textured white lines around marcille and around the silhouette of the cloud using my holy shell brush. This makes them stand out and pop a bit more. And I also started to render in the silhouette of the birds last minute. Alright, and we're almost done. Now it's time to add some special effects. So I usually add in some chromatic aberration, usually in the areas where there's motion, like where her hair is flowing, where the skirt is flowing. And I also like to search up light leak PNG on Google and import that in. It really adds like a nice feel to the piece. Also in areas of motion and in objects closer to the camera, I like to blur it a little bit, as that gives the piece like a nicer feel. And other than that, I also like to add a bunch of random dots everywhere in different neon colors, as that's just like a tiny detail that I've gotten used to doing. And with that, we are finished.